Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back. We are now in assignment 9. If you are reading the online version, that would be pages 244 to 276. Allow me to get started. What we're going to do, of course, I'd like to is go back a little bit to the end of assignment 8 and talk about what happened yesterday when you left off. And that was the professor. This is on page 244. The old professor stood up as he said solemnly, and you were right. There will be pain for us all, but it will not be all pain, nor will this pain be the last. We and you too, you most of all, dear boy, will have to pass through the bitter water before we reach the sweet. But we must be brave of heart and unselfish and do our duty, and all will be well. So, of course, they're now looking down at the dead Lucy, and they're talking about the fact that this is not over. Van Helsing knows darn well that there's still a lot more that they have to do. I slept on a sofa in Arthur's room that night. Van Helsing did not go to bed at all. He went to and fro as if patrolling the house. It was never out of sight of the room where Lucy lay in her coffin, strewn with the wild garlic flowers, which sent through the odor of lily and rose a heavy, overpowering smell into the night. Interesting. I wonder if Van Helsing is patrolling for somebody to come into the house and get them, or if he's worried about something that is already in the house. I'm going to be quiet now. I'm going to begin. This is now assignment number 9. Mina Harker's journal. Mina, on the other hand, is doing pretty well. Jonathan is home. She doesn't know yet about Lucy's death, so let's hear about Mina. September 22nd. In the train to Exeter, Jonathan's sleeping. It seems only yesterday that the last journal entry was made, and yet how much between then? In Whitby and all the world before me. Jonathan away and no news of him, and now married to Jonathan. Jonathan a solicitor, a partner, rich, master of his business. Mr. Hawkins dead and buried, and Jonathan with another attack that may harm him. Someday he may ask me about it. Down it all goes. I am rusty in my shorthand. See what unexpected prosperity does for us, so it may be as well to freshen it up again and exercise anyhow. The service was very simple and very solemn. There were only ourselves and the servants there, one or two old friends of his from Exeter, his London agent, and a gentleman representing Sir John Paxton, the president of the Incorporated Law Society. Jonathan and I stood hand in hand, and we felt that our best and dearest friend was gone from us. Now, remember, of course, they're at the funeral for Jonathan's boss, Mr. Hawkins, who left his fortune to Jonathan and to Mina. We came back to town quietly, taking a bus to Hyde Park Corner. Jonathan thought it would interest me to go into the Row for a while, so we sat down. But there were very few people there, and it was sad looking and desolate to see so many empty chairs. It made us think of the empty chair at home. So we got up and walked down Piccadilly. Jonathan was holding me by the arm the way he used to in the old days before I went to school. I felt it very improper, for you can't go on for some years teaching etiquette and decorum to other girls without the pedantry of it biting into yourself a bit. But it was Jonathan, and he was my husband, and we didn't know anybody who saw us, and we didn't care if they did, so on we walked. I was looking at a very beautiful girl in a big cartwheel hat sitting in a Victoria outside Giuliano's when I felt Jonathan clutch my arm so tight that he hurt me, and he said under his breath, "My God, I'm always anxious about Jonathan, for fear that some nervous fit may upset him again." So I turned to him quickly and asked him what it was that disturbed him. Okay, just so you understand, what she's saying is since he's returned from the Count's castle, he's just been a nut. Everything is bothering him, little things. He's been having like these crazy spells. Again, I would call it PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. But let's continue. So he has seen something or someone. He was very pale and his eyes seemed bulging out, half in terror and half in amazement. He gazed at a tall, thin man with a beaky nose and black mustache and pointed beard, who was also observing the pretty girl. He was looking at her so hard that he did not see either of us, and so I had a good view of him. His face was not a good face. It was hard and cruel and sensual, and big white teeth that looked all the whiter because his lips were so red were pointed like an animal's. Jonathan kept staring at him till I was afraid he would notice. I feared he might take it ill. He looked so fierce and nasty. I asked Jonathan why he was disturbed, and he answered, evidently think that I knew as much about it as he did. "Did you see who it is?" "No, dear," I said. "I don't know him. Who is it?" His answer seemed to shock and thrill me, for it was said as if he did not know that this was me, Mina, to whom he was speaking. "It is the man himself." The poor dear was evidently terrified at something, very greatly terrified. I do believe that if he had not known me to lean on and to support me, and he would have sunk down. He kept staring. A man came out of the shop with a small parcel and gave it to the lady, who then drove off. The dark man kept his eyes fixed on her, and when the carriage moved up Piccadilly, he followed in the same direction and hailed a hansom. Jonathan kept looked after him and said, as if to himself, "I believe it is the Count, but he has grown young. My God, if this be so, oh my God, if only I knew, if only I knew." He was distressing himself so much that I feared to keep his mind on the subject by asking him any questions, so I remained silent. I drew away quietly, and he, holding my arm, came easily. We walked a little further and then went in and sat for a while in Green Park. It was a hot day for autumn, and there was a comfortable seat in a shady place. After a few minutes staring at nothing, Jonathan's eyes closed, and he went quickly into a sleep with his head on my shoulder. I thought it was for the best thing for him, so did not disturb him. In about 20 minutes, he woke up and said to me quite cheerfully, before I continue, I just want to point out that he notices that the Count is younger. It's because the Count has been feeding. And when he eats, it brings him back to his youth, to the spot, to the point where the day that he turned. Let's go on. Why, Mina, have I been asleep? Oh, do forgive me for being so rude. Come and we'll have a cup of tea somewhere. He had evidently forgotten all about the dark stranger. As in his illness, he had forgotten all that this episode had reminded him of. So what she's just telling us is he came home from the Counts and he doesn't remember anything that happened, really. Like when he tries to talk about it, he seems to forget it. The question is he just saying that and not telling her? I don't like this lapsing into forgetfulness. It may make or continue some injury to the brain. I must not ask him for fear I shall do more harm than good, but I must somehow learn the facts of his journey abroad. The time has come, I fear, when I must open the parcel and know what is written. Oh, Jonathan, you will, I know, forgive me if I do wrong, but it is for your own dear sake. So now she's saying that she is going to open Jonathan's journal and read it. Later, a sad homecoming in every way, the house empty of the dear soul who was so good to us. Jonathan still pale and dizzy under a slight relapse of his malady, and now a telegram from Van Helsing, whoever he may be. You will be grieved to hear that Miss Westenra died 5 days ago, and that Lucy died the day before yesterday. They were both buried today. And then wham, bam, there's terrible news right there. It's one thing, you knew that the mother was dying, of course, that's sad, but you knew it was happening. She was very ill. But the fact that Lucy died is a complete and total shock. We knew that there was something wrong with her, but she was still young, right? And they didn't understand what was happening with her. Oh, what a wealth of sorrow in a few words. Poor Mrs. Westenra, poor Lucy, gone, never to return to us. Sorry, everybody, I had something in my throat there. Wink, wink. And poor Arthur, to have lost such a sweetness out of his life. Now, that is definitely true. I mean, Arthur just married this woman, and a couple of weeks later, she dies. That's terrible. I mean, worse for her, but bad for him. God help us all to bear our troubles. Dr. Seward's diary continued. 22nd September. All right, so now we are out of Mina, and we're back in Dr. Seward's journal. Let's go. 22 September, it is all over. Arthur has gone back to Ring and has taken Quincy Morris with him. What a fine fellow is Quincy. I believe in my heart of hearts that he suffered as much about Lucy's death as any of us, but he bore himself through it like a moral Viking. If America can go on breeding men like that, she will be a power in the world indeed. Van Helsing is lying down, having a rest preparatory to his journey. He goes to Amsterdam tonight, but says he returns tomorrow night and that he only wants to make some arrangements which can only be made personally. He is to stop with me then, if he can. He says he has work to do in London, which may take him some time. Poor old fellow. I fear that the strain of the past week has broken down even his iron strength. All the time of the burial I could see putting some terrible restraint on himself. When it was all over, we were standing beside Arthur, who, poor fellow, was speaking of his part in the operation where his blood had been transfused to his Lucy's veins. I could see Van Helsing's face grow white and purple by turns. Arthur was saying that he felt since then as if they two had been really married and that she was his wife in the sight of God. None of us said a word of the other operations, and none of us ever shall. All right, so basically, just so you understand what happened there, apparently Arthur was heard telling people that the fact that he gave Lucy blood sealed them together, which is very interesting, that he said it sealed them before God because they shared their blood, and that they made them even more married. And of course, everybody looked down at the ground and is very quiet because remember, Arthur doesn't know that the other men gave her their blood as well, and they're going to keep that quiet. There's certainly no need for Arthur to know now that she has passed away. It's just very odd and curious that he would think that because they gave blood that they're more married. Okay, let's continue. Arthur and Quincy went away together to the station, and Van Helsing and I came on here. The moment we were alone in the carriage, he gave way to a regular fit of hysterics. He has denied to me since that it was hysterics and insisted that it was only his sense of humor asserting itself under very terrible conditions. He laughed till he cried, and I had to draw down the blinds lest anyone should see us and misjudge. And then he cried till he laughed again and laughed and cried together, just as a woman does. I'm sorry. There it is again. They had a hard time with women in that day and age and just did not give them the strength that women so deservedly deserve. Let's continue. And then he cried. He laughed again and laughed and cried together, just as a woman does. I tried to be stern with him as one is to a woman under the circumstances, but it had no effect. Men and women are so different in manifestations of nervous strength or weakness. This, so they're saying that men are much stronger than women, right? Women can't take things the same way. They need a man to come in and explain it. I wonder how men would do, this is just a Mr. Kennyism, actually giving birth to a woman. I mean, to a baby. Could you imagine? To say that a woman doesn't have strength, it's just mind-boggling to me how stupid men can be, and certainly were during the Victorian age, back in the 18 and 1900s. I'm going to continue, and I'm going to stop now of talking about that nonsense. Then when his face grew grave and stern again, I asked him why his mirth and why at such a time. His reply was in a way characteristic of him, for it was logical and forceful and mysterious. He said, "Oh, you don't comprehend, friend John. Do not think that I'm not sad, though I laugh." Because remember, this man's wife just died. "See, I have cried even when the laugh did choke me, but no more think that I am all sorry when I cry, for the laugh he come just the same." And what he's saying is that his laughing is really him crying, I believe. I'm going to shut up now. "Keep it always with your laughter, who knock at your door and say, 'May I come in?' is not true laughter. No, he is a king, and he come when and how he like. He asked no person. He chose no time of suitability. He say, 'I am here. Behold, an example. I grieve my heart out for that so sweet young girl. I give my blood for her, though I am old and worn. I give my time, my skill, my sleep. I let my other sufferers want that she may have all. And yet I can laugh at her very grave. Laugh when the clay from the spade of the sextons drop upon her coffin and say, thud, thud to my heart, till it sent back the blood from my cheek. My heart bleed for that poor boy, that dear boy, so of the age of mine own boy, that I had been so blessed that he live, and with his hair and eyes the same. There, you know now why I love him so. And yet when he say things that touch my husband heart to the quick, and make my father heart yearn to him as to no other man, not even you, friend John, for we are more level in experiences than father and son, yet even such a moment king laugh, he come to me and shout and bellow in my ear, here I am, till the blood come dance back and bring some of the sunshine that I carry with him to my cheek. Oh, friend John, it is a strange world, a sad world, a world full of miseries and woes and troubles. And yet when King Laugh come, he make them all dance to the tune he play. Bleeding hearts and dry bones at the churchyard. Just so you know, I really don't know what the heck is going on right here. I'm wondering if he's talking about God and how things are unexplainable. That's my best guess. I'm going to continue. Bleeding hearts and dry bones of the churchyard, and tears that burn as they fall, all together together to the music that he make with that smile in his mouth of him. And believe me, friend John, that he is good to come and kind. We men and women are like ropes drawn tight with strain that pull us different ways. When tears come and the like rain on the ropes, they brace us up until perhaps the strain become too great and we break. But King Laugh, he come like the sunshine, and he ease off the strain again, and we dare to go on with our labor, what it may be. I got to catch my breath after that. I still don't really know what the heck that was. Let's continue. I did not like to wound him by pretending not to see his idea. Oh, okay. So he doesn't even understand what the heck he's talking about. But as I did not yet understand the cause of his laughter, I asked him. As he answered me, his face grew stern, and he said in quite a different tone. Basically, guys and gals, I think this man is at lack of blood, lack of sleep. His wife just died, his new wife, and I think this is what's really breaking him. They have to deal right now with a supernatural threat that they don't understand, right? They don't know what's going on right now, and I think it's freaking him out a little bit. Oh, it was the grim irony of all this, so lovely lady garlanded with flowers that looked so fair as life, till one by one we wondered if she were truly dead. She laid in that so fine marble house in that lonely churchyard, where rest so many of her kin, laid there with the mother who loved her and whom she loved, and that sacred bell going toll, 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 so sad and slow, and those holy men with the white garments of the angel pretending to read books, and yet all the time their eyes never on the page, and all of us with the bowed head, and all for what? She is dead. So, is it not? Well, for the life of me, Professor, I said, I can't see anything to laugh at in all that. Why? Oh, so this is the professor speaking. I'm sorry, this isn't Arthur speaking. So he doesn't understand why the professor is cracking up. But I still say the same thing. The professor has lack of sleep, lack of blood. He just saw a nice young girl whom he did like very much pass away, his patient. And he's dealing with this supernatural threat that I think he's terrified. But what even if the burial service was comic? What about poor Art and his trouble? Why his heart was simply breaking? And Dr. John is saying, and Dr. Jack Seward is saying, dude, what are you laughing at? And Van Helsing is saying, dude, I'm laughing because I'm losing it here. This is crazy. Just so, said he, not that the transfusion of his blood to her veins has made her truly his bride. Yes, and it was a sweet and comforting idea for him. Quite so. But there was a difficulty, friend John. If so that, all right, now he's coming back to figuring out the case at hand. We're not hearing his craziness. If so that, then what about the others? Ho, ho. Then the so sweet maid is a polyandrist, and me with my poor wife dead to me. Oh, okay. All right. The whole thing. Now I get it. He's laughing about the fact that this guy said because he gave her his blood, that makes him more of a husband to her than just being married. And he's saying, well, crap, I gave her my blood. You gave her blood. He gave her blood so that we're all married to her. So we're all breaking God's law by marrying too many. You're not allowed to marry more than one person. Okay. Whatever. It's kind of crazy, but let's continue. But alive by church's law, though no wits, all gone, even I, who am faithful husband to this now wife, am a bigamist. I don't see where the joke come in there either, I said. And I did not feel particularly pleased with him for saying such things. He had laid his hand on my arm and said, forgive me, John, forgive me if I pain. I showed not my feelings to others when it would wound, but only to you, my old friend, whom I can trust. Okay, so John's like, dude, I can't believe you're laughing at this right now, that you're making jokes about being, we're all married to her and whatnot. And Van Helsing says, you know what, dude? I would never do it to those poor guys over there. I did it to you because you are my friend and I needed to get it out. Now I understand that whole thing. Let's continue. If you could have looked into my heart then when I want to laugh, if you could have done so when the laugh arrived, if you could do so now when King laugheth, pack up his crown, and all that is to him, for he go far, far away from me and for a long, long time, maybe you would perhaps pity me the most of all. Okay, and that whole thing, he was talking about King Laugh, and it's capitalized. What he's saying there, that's a very interesting theory that Van Helsing has, is that there's this thing called King Laugh, and sometimes it comes and it takes you over and you can't stop it. And everybody has actually been in that experience, like laughing in church and you shouldn't be laughing, but you can't stop yourself and everybody's looking at you like you're a psycho, kind of like your English teacher right now who can't stop talking. That's what King Laugh. So that's what he was talking about back there. And what he was saying was, I thought this joke in my head and it couldn't stop laughing and it's awful and I'm sorry. I think from this point forward, he's actually going to get back in business. And that is actually my cue for today. You are now on page 253 at the top of the page where it says, I was touched by the tenderness of his phone and asked him. And then he says, because I know. And wow, I think this gets important right now. So you're going to have to read this by yourself. So this is page 253 at the top of the page, and you are reading till 276. Enjoy the rest of assignment number 9 and have a fantastic day. Thank you very much. I will see you tomorrow.